Las Vegas, the story we're here to cover live. And unfortunately, each time we cover a tragic shooting, it raises the question about how to prevent the next one, how to not have a next one, how to stop mass murders. This one ended up in terms of an individual or two shooting a group of unknowns being the largest of that sort in American history.
And for some who have lived through this kind of terror that we saw in Vegas this week, it brings the issue front and center. Our next guest believes it is time to hear everyone's opinion when it comes to having the gun control conversation. Danny Myrick is an award-winning songwriter in Nashville. He has written for Jason Aldean, of course, who was the musician on stage at the time the Las Vegas gunman opened fire. Danny, welcome. What an emotional few days you've had. We know you've played at the Mandalay Bay many, many times. What was your initial thought when you heard that shooting?
Well, I have a really good friend who has a songwriter show called Nashville Unplugged that's every Friday night at Mandalay. So I go out there frequently, become really, really good friends with the CEO and his family. And of course, our first thought was, you know, prayers for all of the people involved in it, and immediately texting people that we knew just to make sure that they're okay. And of course, it's frightening. They had their show Friday night, and to know that our friends were there and this shooter was there the whole time is chilling. So yes, we're very, very thankful that all of our friends and family out there are safe, but our hearts certainly go out to those who lost family members. What a tragic event.
It's 59 dead and 527 injured. You've been part of the country music scene for most of your life, and you, like others in your community, were raised in what you call a gun culture. Tell me a little about the relationship between country music and gun culture, only in terms of how this discussion moves forward among people who have witnessed this attack.
Well, I think, you know, I grew up in South Mississippi. I actually got my brother and I at Christmas when I was 10 and he was 11. My grandfather gave us our first shotgun, and we had been in the woods a good bit with him. It's a family culture that you grow up doing things, you know, it's a culture where the family Bible's on the coffee table and you say grace before every meal and that sort of thing. And it's a simpler time that I think country music frequently goes back to. And so we were taught gun safety, you know, taught how to be really, really careful with them. And it just was a simpler way of life that you certainly never foresaw this coming in the country that we live in, you know. And I think that things are changing, for certainly, you know.
Things certainly aren't simple today. 22,000 people. Right. Running scared, running for their life on Sunday night. What do you want to see happen as a result of the tragedy that took place here?
Well, I think a couple of things. You know, first of all, I think we could take a huge step towards seeing some change if we would, you know, kind of correct some of the hateful rhetoric that we're seeing so frequently. I think, you know, I think Washington, D.C. gets to a standstill on a lot of these issues because everything gets politicized and there's so many agendas at work. And so I think we've gotten to a climate now that we're not really working effectively to try to understand and hear the other side. I think it's much easier to label those who don't see things the way you do, to stereotype them and label them as opposed to hear them and understand them. I think we see that in Washington all the time, and I think we can do a better job of that. You know, maybe it begins, if we can't go to step 10, maybe step 1 is looking at these assault rifles, bigger magazines, the amount of ammunition you can buy. You certainly have to think common sense tells you that the greater difficulty that you have obtaining the kind of weaponry that this guy had, the greater the odds of this not happening would be. Maybe that's a starting point.
Yeah, well, we'll take a starting point. If we don't look like we're getting to an end point anytime soon, so we'll take a starting point. Danny Myrick, country music singer, thank you very much for your thoughts and for being with us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And as we go to commercial break, oh, thank you. And as we go to